I know the last few weeks must have been a roller coaster for you. You know, putting together a function like this, of this quality, and yet brawling on a shoestring budget. Brawling is the key word there. It's a mean feat. I can confirm that the situation at Brawlers right now, looking at how people look, I can't remember the exact date when General S.B. Moyo was on TV when he says the situation has moved to another level. I can confirm that tonight's event has moved to another level. Well done, Captain, and your team, and you deserve a round of applause. Your Excellency, Ambassador David Hamadziripi, we are honored to have you tonight at our prestigious Brawlers annual year-end function. Today marks the first night or first official Brawlers event that you meet the wider Brawlers community. A day that you continued with the tradition we set with your predecessor, whereby you share with us some insights regarding our country. Zimbabwe has many challenges. And what we would like to know tonight, before we start dancing and forgetting or getting stupid through the night, is how can we help? Or how do we understand what seems to be the great havoc in this country? Your presence is most appreciated. And seeing Amaya Hamadziripi, looking glam and young, sitting next to you, I think we're going to see some inspirational ambassadorial dance moves tonight. And thank you for gracing us. CG, I know he's still on his way, or he's somewhere. Members of the diplomatic corps, the Brawlers community at large, it gives me such great pleasure to be here and see that our Brawlers vision is indeed alive and lives through us. Part of the vision that we set for ourselves was to find ways to mobilize and aggregate diaspora resources towards rebuilding Zimbabwe. That was in 2012 when we started Brawlers. At that time, we didn't think of that. But in 2016, we thought, how do we mobilize and aggregate diaspora resources towards rebuilding of Zimbabwe's critical infrastructure? In order to do this, us as Brawlers and diaspora, we need to continue to understand where our country is headed economically. What is happening in Zimbabwe is many of us asking questions. Are we moving forward or backwards? How long will it take to get Zimbabwe to where it should be? How do we see the opportunities through what seems to be a regressing economic environment filled with a lot of noise and dust that we don't understand? To help us understand and answer some of these questions, we thought we should have His Excellency, Ambassador David Hamadziripi, give us a keynote speech focusing on the topic, Zimbabwe, a transitioning economy and the opportunities for the diaspora. But before His Excellency gives his keynote address, I thought we should spend some time trying to define and understand what exactly is a transitional economy. What happens in a transitional economy? And how do we position ourselves and benefit in a transitional economy? This is a very heavy subject for tonight, but in Brawlers tradition, for the last 4 years, we've always had a difficult topic throughout our functions. Just to make sure that, at least you wore the bow ties and the dresses and everything you've done for some very good reason. So, it's okay if it gets heavy, but keep the wine flowing. So first, transitional economy is an economy which is undergoing change from being a centrally planned economy to being a free market-based economy. So one could say it is a state moving from being a communist state to a free economy, or otherwise moving away from being a government-controlled economy to a free market economy. Generally, countries that go into transitional processes are countries either coming from a civil war, what we call the fragile states, or countries coming out of long periods of economic decline due to bad government policies or sanctions and economic isolation. So as we talk tonight, keep this at the back of your mind. Zimbabwe has joined the many other nations that are trying to move from a centrally planned economy, or what you can call a command economy, or a governed economy, to a free market economy, in order to reverse years of economic decline. So Zimbabwe is a transitioning economy. And the next question is, what happens in a transition economy? Now, we're talking about all of this, and what I'm trying to do here is give you a background and context and a framework to understand what His Excellency is going to talk about tonight, so that you can position yourselves correctly within the context of Zimbabwe. So, transition economies undergo a set of structural transformations intended to transform institutions and develop them into market-based institutions. This is frequently accompanied by liberalization of markets, be either the removal of statutory instruments that were designed to protect government monopolies or state-sanctioned cartels, or just removal of trade barriers. I think in Zimbabwe, we have seen some very reactionary removal of trade barriers or statutory instruments around certain industries that were perceived or are in cartel structures. We saw some removal of fuel statutory instrument. We saw removal of foods and general FMCG commodities statutory instrument, just to afford Zimbabwe when the shops were running dry. But those things were done as a reaction to immediate shortages. But coming back to the topic of tonight, and as I do this, I know this is a very heavy subject, but I'll try my best. I'll give you some example to put context to our story. We can use our former colonial parent, Britain. Britain from the 1939 to 1945 war time, World War, from the World War, it came out very economically exhausted. It was one of the top 3 superpowers, although in reality a distant third behind the United States and the Soviet Union. Britain emerged as a social democracy, combining planning, or what you call command economics, and collectivism with civil liberties. And the mixed economy, the state owned the utility companies, such as the gas, electricity, coal, rail, etc., and regularly the state would intervene and plan for those utilities. Simply put, Britain was a centrally planned economy, or a command economy. I know Zimbabweans understand the word command very well. Command agriculture, command, it's fine, it is. If you decide that is your path you want to take, then take the path. Beginning in 1979, with the newly elected Thatcher government, Britain embarked on a decade-long of economic reform, aiming at transitioning its economy into a free market economy, being a command economy. Thatcher was the most unpopular prime minister, known as the Iron Lady, during those times. But she set Britain on a path that would see Britain pull itself out of the abyss of economic paralysis and become more market responsive. Today, all of us say, I wish I can go to UK. I wish I'll send my kids to UK. There was a time when Rhodesia, it was still Rhodesia, would crowdfund to send money to poor Britain. It is not imaginable anymore in this day that that happened. But at some point in time, somebody decided, or some people decided, a movement decided that things should change. Through this British transitional period, there's been a large and small-scale privatization of formerly state-owned and run British institutions. You would know of British Airways, British Rail, British Petroleum or BP, British Broadcasting Corporation, BBC, Rolls-Royce, British Rail, Cable and Wireless, London Buses, Liverpool Airport, Regional Water Authority, and most recently Royal Mail, and the private equity circling around NHS, the health company. And all of those companies were put into privatization mode. Some of them fully privatized, some semi-privatized. That was a result of the transition economy that started. Now, the real point here is, I'm trying to frame a conversation and prepare His Excellency when he comes here to give us more around Zimbabwe. But the real point here is that there was a massive shift in the role within these command businesses. The state became a regulator, not an operator. Coupled with the financial sector development strategy, Britain saw a massive jump in private capital investment into previously state-owned enterprises as the private sector took ownership of these assets for profit. There's nothing wrong with profit, by the way. What Britain went through, China did from 1978 with President Deng, who reformed China from a pure communist state to some level of a mixed free economy. To join the European Union, there was a deadline of 1 May 2004, if you remember. Czech Republic, Estonia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Slovakia, Slovenia had to complete the transition process, which had certain few key parameters that they had to do within the economy to reform it. And I keep saying this so that when we get to Zimbabwe, when we look at Zimbabwe, we should look at Zimbabwe through the same window. South American countries have to a large extent failed to transition their economies to transition or as transition economies. These transition trajectories have varied considerably in practice. In some cases, reforms have been accompanied with political upheaval, such as the overthrow of a dictator in Romania, or the declaration of independence by Croatia. Even Thatcher herself and John Major failed to hold on to power as the population felt punished and impoverished by their transition economic policies. This is important to understand in the context of Zimbabwe. The current currency reforms, state institutional reforms, privatization proposals, and the fiscal consolidation measures under Minister Mtuli's transitional stabilization plan are leaving most confused as the changes seem to wreak havoc and pain to the populace. It is this confusion and pain we're trying to make sense of and determine our role in all of this. We know that from most economies that have gone through transition process, they rapidly privatize small enterprises and small units of state-owned firms, creating a lot of small and medium-sized enterprises which went into the hands of the new millionaires today. In conclusion, could Zimbabwe's transitional economy be an opportunity for us to emerge as the owners of the new small to medium businesses in Zimbabwe? Russians and American millionaires that you see today, that we all go and glorify and run around, were born during such planned havoc. Your Excellency, what is the space that is being evacuated by government as it transitions from a command economy to a free market economy that we should look at? As part of DIDG, we are aware of this view. In fact, our view was that Zimbabwe probably started transitioning in 2016 when its back was against the wall. For today, I'll stop here, and I hope I've given some macro level setting and background to why the keynote by His Excellency Ambassador Hamadziripi is relevant tonight. So I'd like you to join me in welcoming His Excellency Ambassador David Hamadziripi as he comes to deliver his keynote speech. Thank you.